Okay, let's go over the review for chapters 8 and 9. I call it 8 and 9. It also has that one section from chapter 3, 3.6. The first question asks you about the domain and the range of a given relation. Okay, so for this one, there are two parts to the answer. There's the domain and the range. How do I get the domain? It's the set of x's. So it is the set 13, -1, 5. The range is the set of y's. So it will be 13, -10, 10. And that's all there is to it. If a number happens to be listed more than once in either the domain or the range, all you need to do is list it once. Of course, you will be choosing from multiple choice answers. Any questions on domain and range?
It's going to be a little different from
Well, what the test has done is take this question with, of course, different numbers, and then give you 4 choices. Okay, so it takes these exact questions, 18 of them, and changes up the numbers, and then gives you some multiple choice options. All right, number 2 and 3. It says determine whether the relation is also a function. All right, take a look at number 2. What are you checking, the x values or the y values? Check the x's. I see -2, 2, 4, 8, 12. So each one of those x's has, for each x, there is only one y. None of the x's are repeated. So what do you think about number 2? It is a function. On the test, you will simply have 2 choices, yes or no. Number 3, the x values are 3, 3, 5, 9, and 10. Is that a function or not a function? That is not a function. And the reason, although you're not responsible for coming up with a reason, but the reason is the repeated 3. Okay? So, like I said, on the test, it will be a yes, no. Yes, sir.
This review will be on the right?
Yes. This review, it's the first review listed, and this video will be posted soon after class today. Okay? Number 4. Use the vertical line test to determine whether the graph is the graph of a function. So, at least mentally, if not physically, you pass vertical lines from left to right across the graph, and you're checking to see, does it ever hit the graph in more than one location? And the answer to that is no, it's okay. So this one passes the vertical line test, which means it is a function. And I believe on the test, once again, that would be a yes-no question. Number 5, same kind of question. We're still using the vertical line test. And what do you say about the vertical line test this time? It fails because for a particular x value represented by a vertical line, there are 2 different y's. There's a y up here and a y down here. So this is not a function. It would be no. Okay, problem number 6. The instructions say to evaluate the function. It says find f of 2. So f of 2 is going to be 3 parentheses 2 squared plus 2 parentheses 2 plus 1. I need to simplify this. Make sure you're using the order of operations, which says do exponents before you do multiplication. So it's going to be 3 times 4 plus 2 times 2 plus 1. Now I can use my multiplication. 3 times 4 is 12 plus 2 times 2 is 4 plus a 1. And that gives me 17. And you'll have 4 choices to choose from. Is that okay? All right, number 7 is also an evaluate question. It asks you to find f of 14. F of 14 is the absolute value of 14 minus 8. As a little reminder about absolute value, make sure that you totally simplify the inside of the absolute value before you take the absolute value of the quantity. So keep your absolute values until you have a single number in there. 14 minus 8 gives me 6. And what is the absolute value of 6? It's 6. The absolute value of a positive number is positive. The absolute value of a negative number is positive. And the absolute value of 0 is 0. Okay, so it returns 0 when you have a 0 in there. All the rest of the time it returns a positive answer. All right, so that's the first 7 questions. Now we're going to hit some graphing. Although I'm going to be doing graphing by hand, I would recommend that you practice the graphing by hand and then match it to the answer choices. Okay, question number 8. I'm sorry, I said it was a graphing question. It's actually using a graph. And you can tell that because it says use the graph. Use the graph of the following function f of x to find the value. Now the value is down here. We did several of these together. I'm supposed to find f of negative 1 equals something. All right? X and y. What is this? An x or a y? The number inside is the x because it's f of x. The answer that you get is y. So what this question is saying is when f is negative 1, when x is negative 1, what's the y value? Well, you have to be kind of careful because this question, unlike some of the math lab questions, has 2 points highlighted. They're not both the answer. Where is x equal to negative 1? Well, isn't it equal to negative 1 all along here? Where does that hit the graph? It hits it right down here. So what is the y coordinate of that point? It is negative 9. Okay, so when that is the point, negative 1, comma, negative 9. We're looking for what point on this line has an x coordinate of negative 1, and then what is its y coordinate. Okay, so I'm just looking for this answer. Is that okay? All right. Number 9. Now I have a graph. All right, I'm going to work in this space right over here, and then I'll scoot back to the graph for those of you in class. All right, we have f of x is equal to 1/2 x. I'm going to use slope intercept. If you choose to use some other method to graph it, I won't know the difference. It doesn't matter. It's a multiple choice question anyway. But if I'm going to graph this, I'm going to start with M and B. B is for begin. Where will you begin this line? At 0. There is no number added or subtracted, which means it must have been a 0. The B value is 0. The M value is the coefficient of x, so it's 1/2, which means up 1, right 2. Now I have the information that I need to do the graph. I will begin on the y-axis at 0. From there, I'll go up 1 block, right 2 blocks. Up 1 block, right 2 blocks. You certainly don't have to repeat that action, but I do. you would be looking for the answer choice that definitely goes through 0, 0, and then you should be able to count up and over and land on the line again. It's a little different activity when you're just trying to identify which of these is the right graph. Anybody have a question on this one? Okay. That was 9. All right, here's 10. I have f of x is 1/4 x plus 2. Where will I begin? At 2, and remember it's on the y-axis. The slope is 1/4, which means up 1, right 4. When I graph it, I'm looking for the answer choice that begins at 2 on the y-axis. From there, if I go up 1 block over 1, 2, 3, 4, I should see another point on the line. This is going to have a positive slope, but it's not very steep. The bigger the number, the steeper it gets. And this one is just 1/4. Any questions on that one? We okay? And one more graph. Whoops, sorry. It says f of x is equal to -2. All right, this one. What kind of line is this? In my mind, f of x is always being replaced with a y. Function notation has f of x, but in my mind it's a y. So if this says y equals -2, it's a special line. What kind of line? It's horizontal. Remember that that is on your note sheet. It's a horizontal line. It'll say y equals a number is a horizontal line. What does it do? Well, it cuts through the y-axis at -2. It is not part of the question, but I'm going to ask you, just out of curiosity, what is the slope of that line? 0. That's not part of the question at all. I believe those are the examples of graphing that we'll have. When we get to numbers 12 through 15, this is the part of the lesson, I believe from 8.1, that asks you to find the equation of the line, and it gives you certain information. The tools that you need are on your blue sheet. You need the slope formula, you need y equals mx plus b, and you need the point slope formula. You need to know about parallel and perpendicular lines. All right, the first of these questions, number 12, says you are given that m is 4, the slope is 4, and your line goes through -3, 5. When you have a question like this and you're looking for the equation of the line, say to yourself, what have I been given? I've been given a point and the slope. Point and the slope, use point slope. The point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Get a little more room. All right, I've got my slope value up here. I've got x1, y1. So I have y minus 5 is equal to 4 times x minus a -3. You need to be real careful when one of your coordinates is negative. What do we do when we've got minus minus? Make it plus. I'll take a step to do that. Y minus 5 is equal to 4 times x plus 3. Distributive property, keeping the y minus 5.
Both the forms are negative.
If you just would be distributing a negative 4. Okay, so if the slope is negative, you're just distributing a negative. That'll give me 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times 3 is 12. I am solving this for y. The instructions say to write it as a function, in function notation. I'll do that at the very end. Add 5, so I get y is equal to 4x plus 17. By the instructions, I really should say f of x is 4x plus 17. That is function notation. Y equals, it's in the right form, but it's not function notation. I don't think that's a super big deal, but just in case, if you had 2 answer choices for this one, I don't think they would do this to you, but who knows. If the instructions said to write the equation in function notation, then only the last one would be the correct answer, because it has f of x, function notation. Any questions on 12? Slope and a point. All right, number 13. This time, the instructions still hold, find the equation of the line. This time, you are given that the line goes through the point 17 and the point 0, negative 2. 2 points. What is about the only thing you can find if you've got 2 points? And what is it that's so critical to know when you're finding the equation of a line? Slope. So, part 1, find slope. So I have the slope is, my version of the formula is y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. The y's are on the top of this formula, and the x's are on the bottom. So for the top, I have 7 minus negative 2 over 1 minus 0. Easy to make a sign mistake at this point. Minus minus, it makes that plus. So I have 7 plus 2, which is 9, over 1, or 9. Slope is 9. So part 1 of the problem was to find that the slope was 9. What do you have to do now? I'm writing the equation of the line, and so far I have slope. You need to, for part 2, you need to pick a point. So we'll go back up. Which of those 2 points would you like me to pick? 0, negative 2. Okay, the choice was 0, negative 2. Okay, who said that? Okay, what about the 0? It does something. That's exactly right. You remembered a little piece of something. Does anybody remember the whole thing? When you get, and this is only if, the x value of a point is 0, then the y value of that point is b. That's a big if, because who knows whether I'm going to give you one of those. So we could, if you notice that, stop the problem right now and say, oh, I've just found out that m is 9, and I just noticed that b is negative 2. So this is y equals 9x minus 2. That's if you notice that. F of x is 9x minus 2. But let's pretend that we didn't notice that. Okay? Or I could say y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, because I have a point and I have the slope. So I have y minus, let's see, what did I have? I had that m was 9 and the point was 0, negative 2. So I have y minus negative 2 is equal to 9 times x minus 0. This is if I didn't notice that I already had the b value. So minus minus means plus plus. That means I have y plus 2 is equal to 9x minus 0. 9 times 0 is 0. In other words, I don't need to write that. I need to subtract 2 from both sides, and I get y is equal to 9x minus 2. F of x is 9x minus 2. Did I get the same answer as I did when I noticed that I had the y-intercept? If you notice it, you save yourself a little time. You see the answer, you look at your answer choices, you pick it. You don't see it, you finish the calculations, and you get the same equation. Is everybody okay with what it takes to find the equation of a line if you have 2 points? You need to start with slope, and then you've got to either have a point, or it'd be really, really nice if you noticed you had the y-intercept. Okay. Number 14. I have a line. It goes through 6, 5, and it is parallel to f of x equals 4x minus 3. Okay, you told me on the last problem, what is this one little bit of information that you absolutely have to start a problem? Slope. Okay, I didn't give you the slope. Did I give you anything related to slope? Parallel. There is a key word, parallel. When two lines are parallel, what's true about their slopes? They're the same. Okay, can you identify the slope of this given line over here? It's 4, because this is in the form y equals mx plus b, which means that m is 4. Well, if m is 4 in that line, what's the slope of my line? It is also 4. Parallel, yes, m is the same. Perpendicular, it would be opposite in sign and reciprocal, 2 changes, opposite and reciprocal, but this one is parallel. So now I have that my line goes through 6, 5, and I have the slope. I'm going to use point slope. All right, I have y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. I have to remind myself. It is y minus 5 is equal to 4 times x minus 6. Is everybody okay with that? I don't have any negatives to worry about, or double negatives. So I have y minus 5 is equal to distributive property. That's 4x minus 24. Add 5 to both sides. And I have y is equal to 4x minus 19. And I guess if we're being real picky, that's f of x is equal to 4x minus 19. Function notation. So not at all a bad problem. You have to remember this. It's on your blue sheet, but something's got to trigger it in your mind. And I think what would do that is if you remember, you've got to know the slope.
It's already one.
Pardon?
It's already one, sir.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at number 15. You have a line that goes through negative 2, 4, and it is perpendicular to y equals negative 2x plus 3. What do you have to write the equation of a line? What do you have to have first? Slope. Okay. What do you know about perpendicular lines? Opposite reciprocals as slopes. What's the slope of this line? Right. This slope is negative 2. So, what will my slope be? Perfect. 1 over 2. He changed the sign from a negative 2 to a positive, and then flipped this negative 2 over 1 to 1 over 2. So, when you see the word perpendicular, you have to remember opposite and reciprocal. And now, you have a point, you have the slope. Point, slope. Now, your test questions should be like these. But what if, just what if, the line given here was not in slope-intercept form? What if it said something like 5x plus 3y equals 15? What would you have to do to it to identify its slope? Yeah, you'd have to solve for y. You had to do that in some of the math lab questions, but your test question will probably be like this, which means it'll be nice and friendly. Okay, sorry, just wanted to mention that. So I have y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So I'm going to have y minus 4 is equal to 1/2 times x minus a negative 2. Notice right away I've got minus minus. I want to make sure you take care of that. So I have y minus 4 is equal to 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. What is 1/2 times 2? What's half of 2? It's 1. If that's not a nice number to take half of, then you would go off to the side and you would say, well, let me do this. 1/2 times 2 over 1. And you would do the arithmetic. Those would have canceled out, and that's where I got the 1. So if you need to, you would do that. All right, now I'm going to add 4, and I get y is equal to 1/2 x plus 5. Function notation, f of x is 1/2 x plus 5. So, you know what parallel means? You know what perpendicular means. Usually, those are considered the hardest questions on the test. All right, next little group comes out of 8.23. Remember when I merged those for no apparent reason? All right, these actually are out of 8.3. These are in the transformations, and these could pop into the test there won't be a particular order. Here there's an order, but they'll just be graph this. They'll be in a group, but they'll just be all mixed up in there. Now, things you need to remember, I'll point out. I'm just going to draw little sketches here. I don't have any graph grids for this part. Number 16, it says graph f of x equals x squared. So f of x equals x squared. This is one of the graphs that I want you just to know what it looks like. When you wake up in the morning, what does it look like? It's a parabola, and we have not spent a lot of time with that name. It's a U, and it's a symmetrical U. The right side looks like the left side. Is that okay for 16? All right, now, on this review, number 17 is sort of related to it. So I'm going to do it right here. Number 17 is f of x equals x squared plus 4. So f of x equals x squared plus 4. Which way will this graph shift? It's on the outside of the x squared. It'll shift up. So that's something that you're going to want to have perhaps written down or have reviewed. I strongly encourage you to think about all your notes, to read through everything, to have practiced before you start the test. You've got plenty of time, but I hate for you to be scrambling, oh my gosh, I need to look that up. You have the ability to look it up. When I give you an online test and I give you plenty of time, I know that's going to happen. All right. So, does everybody know that this means up 4? It's a positive number, and it's outside the squaring. And that will make more sense in a minute when I look at another problem. So it's up here. But it is the positive that told us to go up. It was the fact that it was on the outside of the squaring that said to go vertically instead of horizontally. All right, so there's 16 and 17. They sort of are a pair. Number 18. It is f of x is equal to, well, I'm sorry, and I'm not necessarily even using the right letters. I hope you don't think that's a real big deal, because it's not. But I should have been more careful. That was h of x. And so is this one. It's just a function name. That's the absolute value of x. What does the absolute value of x look like? It looks like a v. Please make sure that I can tell your v's from your u's. Oh, never mind. This is multiple choice. I don't have to worry about that. All right, everybody okay with that? You're just recognizing it. I keep forgetting I'm not used to giving multiple choice tests. Number 19. It says to graph, or in this case recognize, g of x is the absolute value of x plus 5. I mentioned a minute ago about inside versus outside. This plus 5 is inside the absolute value. So that means that it shifts it not vertically but horizontally, and it goes the opposite of what the sign says. So this one will go left 5. It will be an absolute value graph, left 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The V will be shifted over here. I would imagine on your answer choices, you will see something shifted left, right, up, and down, and you'll have to pick the right one. Is that okay for 18 and 19? Now, in my math lab, the other graph that you worked with a lot was the square root function, which was that little branch. But I told you that you would be responsible for x cubed. And so it does show up on the review. It will show up on the test. Number 20. Ask you to sketch g of x is equal to x cubed. And this is the wiggle. Number 21 is a transformation on that. It says to sketch f of x is equal to x cubed minus 4. Now, is that 4 on the inside or the outside of the cubing? Outside, which means which way does it shift? Down 4. So that point where it would have gone through the origin gets shifted down 4, and it wiggles through that point instead. And you'll be doing multiple choice. Anybody have a question on the transformations? When you add or subtract something on the outside of the function, it always causes a vertical change, and the sign tells you which way it goes. Anytime you add or subtract inside the function, in the parentheses, in the absolute values, in the square root, then it affects it horizontally, the opposite direction of what the sign says. All right. We now have a couple, well, on the review, I think we have 3 inequalities to graph. There won't be 3 of them on the test. This is significantly longer than the test. All right, number 22. It asks us to graph x plus y is less than or equal to -5. I like to use slope-intercept, which means what do I need to do to this inequality? Solve for y. I'm going to subtract x from both sides, and I have y is less than or equal to -x minus 5. The inequality sign is very, very important to make lots of decisions. It's a less than or equal to. Does that tell me that I will graph with a solid or a dotted line? Solid. When I shade, because it's a less than or equal to, will I shade above or below the line? Below. When I draw this solid line, where will I begin? At -5 on the y-axis. The slope is -1 over 1, which says down 1, right 1. If you chose to do some points to get this line, that, yes, the coefficient of x, although it's not written, is an implied -1, and then I put it over 1. So I like slope-intercept. All right. I'm going to begin at -5. From there, I'm going to go down 1, right 1. Okay. And I'm going to draw in a solid line. And you told me to shade below. You won't have to worry about having any pretty pencils or markers because this will be, of course, multiple choice online. But you will be looking for that graph. What is the one process, and I don't know if it's going to come up or not, what is the one thing I might do to this inequality that would make my symbol reverse? If you divide by a negative. If you divide by a negative, it will flip over. All right, so that's 22. 23. The inequality is x is greater than -9. And you've noticed right away that there's no y in this problem. It's just an x. Okay? What kind of line will I be doing if I think about x equals -9? That would be a vertical line. All right, will it be a dotted or a solid vertical line based on that symbol? It will be dotted. Will I shade, now keep in mind, this is a vertical line, so there's nothing that's above it or below it. Will I shade to the right or to the left? X is greater than -9. Where does X get greater? Hopefully to the right. As you move to the right, X gets bigger. So I'm supposed to graph a dotted line at -9 on the, cutting through the x-axis. My x values are supposed to be greater than this, and x gets greater as it goes to the right. I need that little paint bucket, but it's everything on the right-hand side. Your note sheet reminds you that when it's in terms of x's, that greater than means to the right and less than means to the left. Okay, one more. The inequality is 3x plus 5y is less than or equal to 15. Okay, I'm not prepared to graph it just yet. What would I need to solve it for? Y. So I'm going to subtract 3x. That doesn't cause anything to happen. I have 5y less than or equal to -3x plus 15. Next step, divide by 5. Since I'm dividing by a positive, my symbol does not reverse, and I have y is less than or equal to -3/5 x plus 3. I do all of that before I make any decisions about the graph. This symbol, is it caused me to draw a dotted or a solid line? Solid. Will I shade above or below this line? Below. Where will I begin to draw the line? At 3. The slope is -3/5, which is down 3, right 5. All right, I begin at 3 on the y-axis. I move down 3, right 5. I draw a solid line. And I shade below it. And those colors kind of clash. So you'll be looking for things when you're looking at your answer choices. Is the line in the right place? Is it correct as far as is it supposed to be dotted? Is it supposed to be solid? Which side was shaded? And you had some of those in Math Lab that were multiple choice. Okay, the last questions are about systems, where you have to graph a system of inequalities. All right, number 25, here's my system. Y is greater than or equal to, let me scoot this over for the class, y is greater than or equal to x plus 5, and the other one is y is greater than or equal to 9 minus x. I want to be really careful on these. I want to look at just this first one for a minute. It's already got a y equals, so will I use a dotted or a solid line? Solid line. Will I be shading above or below? Above. Where will I begin? At 5. How will I move? There's a 1, so it's 1 over 1. Up 1, right 1. The implied coefficient of x was a 1. I think I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll do it in, I will shade it in blue. All right, so I begin at 5. Let me scoot this over just a little bit. We'll kind of lose some of the work here in the class. All right, I begin at 5. From there, I go up 1, right 1, and I could do that as many times as I need. I need a solid line. And I need to shade above it. When I'm doing a system, if I'm really doing the shading myself, I need to pretty adequately do the shading because I'm looking for an intersection or an overlap. Any questions about that one? All right, the second inequality, it's already in the y isolated form. So what does the symbol tell you? Solid or dotted? Solid. Does it ask you to shade above or below? It's a greater than? Above. Because it's read from y's perspective. Y is greater than this. Now, be careful when you answer this next question. Where will you begin? At 9. Look at the way this is written. In my mind, it's kind of written backwards. I would have preferred this to be, and this is just me, 9 is greater than or equal to negative x plus 9. Because then I would have been thinking more about slope-intercept. But we got it. How will I move? Well, what's the slope? Negative 1. There's an implied 1 there. It's with the x. It's over 1. So it's down 1, right 1. And I will do this one in yellow. So begin at 9. From there, go down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. Draw a solid line. And I'm supposed to shade above it. And can you pretty clearly see the intersection? The intersection is the little piece right in here. If you're doing this on the test, you're looking at multiple choice options, and all you would see would be this line, and this piece shaded. You would not, whoops, hello, where did that go? Okay, I get to try it again. It would not show different colors and an overlap. It'll just show the intersection. But that happened to you if you did the math lab. Okay, this is my last question. I think I'm going to move it down. Okay, this is 26, and I keep saying this, there are just 18 of these on the test. So, as far as problems of systems, I think there's one. All right, I'm going to start with graphing y plus 3x is greater than or equal to negative 4, and then I'm going to look at 3x minus 2y is less than or equal to 12, and put that where the people in class can see it. All right, the first one, is it in the right format? No, I need it the y isolated, so I'm going to subtract 3x, and I get y is greater than or equal to negative 3x minus 4. What does the inequality symbol tell you?
Solid.
Okay, it's going to be solid. It says y is greater than this, so I will shade above. I will begin at -4, and my slope is -3. Put it over 1, which means down 3, right 1. So let's do that in pink. So I begin at -4. I go down 3, right 1. I draw a solid line. And I shade above it. This is more purple than it is pink, but okay, getting a little carried away with my coloring. I'll move on. The second inequality. I have 3x minus, I don't need to show that again. If I want y by itself, what's my first step going to be? Subtract 3x, and I'll have -2y, still less than or equal to -3x plus 12. Divide by -2. What happens to an inequality when you divide by a negative? The symbol flips. So these are going to divide out, and I'm going to have a y. This is going to become a greater than or equal to -3 divided by -2. Negative over negative is positive, 3/2 x. And 12 divided by -2 is -6. Pardon? Yes. This is a solid line. We will shade above. We will begin where? -6. The slope is 3/2, which is up 3 and right 2. And some of that information is going to go out of the view when I pull the graph back down. Well, sort of stays there. All right, I'm going to begin at -6. I'm going to go up 3 and right 2, and there's a point. Draw my line, my solid line. And I'm supposed to shade which way? Above it. And just for the notes, I'll just, in case you were looking back, I'll do this in yellow. And this is pretty dramatic. You can easily see the overlap is that region. Anybody have a question? Okay. It took me 54 minutes to discuss this and do 26 questions. You have 18 and you have 2 hours. So that should be adequate. Don't forget, there is a second review out there on MathLab if you'd like to do it, and this video will be posted.